my really, really hot take, and you guys might hate me for this, but hello and welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to be talking about episode 4 of Daredevil Born Again, titled Sic Semper Systema, which translates to thus always to the system. So what we're going to do is I'm going to basically do a recap of the episode, and then I will get into my thoughts on the episode, my predictions, and whether or not I still believe that my predictions from my first Daredevil video will come to fruition. So we open the episode with Matt learning about Hector's death. He also sees Hector's niece at the hospital, and she's obviously and understandably very distraught, and basically says what we're all thinking, that the cops did this to Hector. I like the line that she says that he's just Hector from the Heights and they're the fucking cops. I think that pretty succinctly summarizes everything from the beginning of the whole trial with Hector all the way up to his untimely demise. At this point, Matt hugs her and says that they have to have faith that somebody is going to find Hector's killer. It's a very touching moment. And you can see Matt's guilt. It reads all over his face because of his own culpability and the fact that, Hector's dead. At this point, the show cuts to Muse, and we get our first look at Muse for the season, and I'm very excited. I have actually been doing some research on Muse because I didn't know anything about him. It's one of those things where I didn't even know he existed as a character until I started making these videos, and I'm genuinely really interested to see what they do with the character. He doesn't have a very rich backstory. There's not a lot of information available on where he even came from. I just know that he's linked to Inhumans, which haven't really been explored in greater MCU canon. So they're definitely going to have to overhaul what little backstory he had. I'm really interested to see if they keep some of his more unique quirks, specifically the fact that he has this weird power where he can he's like a black hole, in the sense that Matt can't detect him in the ways that he would normally detect someone. So he can't hear him or anything like that. He can't figure out where this guy essentially is when he's trying to track him down. I don't know if they're going to keep that as part of Muse's character. I kind of hope so, because this would be a really interesting obstacle for Matt to overcome. More on that later. I do have some things to say. I'm sure you guys have probably read some of these theories by now, but I obviously want to touch base on them as well. The other thing about Muse is that he is incredibly violent and just an all-around fucked up guy. I've seen him referred to as Daredevil's Joker, but without the cringe. And from what I've read about him, that pretty accurately sums him up. He is just pure evil, I think. I like those types of characters. I really do. Muse just wants to create his art, and he just wants to use, people's bones and blood to do it. So great. Fascinating. I'm here for it. Back to the recap. After we see Muse, there is a scene of BB and her friends, including Blake, the one who works for Fisk, and they're out at a club. Overall, nothing super important happens with them besides the fact that Blake, in his drunken state, accidentally leaking some info regarding Fisk and some union busting attempts. So I know this isn't exactly what you would call a hot take, but I find Blake to be so incredibly annoying. I hate every time he's on my screen. He just looks like a little slimy bug. That's mean to the actor. He doesn't look like one in real life, but that's just the vibe that he gives. He's like a slimy cockroach. I don't know. I just don't like him. On top of this, I've seen at least one article that is saying that he could be a Skrull. And to that, I say,
no, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Don't. So speaking of Fisk, we see more of his couples counseling sesh with Heather and Vanessa, and we learn that Vanessa had an affair with a man named Adam. And Fisk seems upset, but not in the way that we would expect him to be. Like, he is visibly upset, but he doesn't get angry in the typical way that he normally would. He doesn't get loud or anything like that. It's very much a look of pain and I guess sadness. He does admit that he verbally confronted Adam, and after that point, neither him nor Vanessa has heard from Adam again. Meanwhile, we're going back to Matt, and he is working a case for a man named Leroy who was arrested for stealing a few boxes of popcorn, which is like insane. So Leroy as a character is a certified dick. Like, there's no question about that. But he does underline some very important points regarding the justice system. He tells Matt that the last time he was in jail, he missed his supplemental security income appointment, and because of that, his benefits were cut. So he's had to rummage through dumpsters to try and feed himself. And this one single time, he said that he wanted to eat something good, and he really likes that caramel corn popcorn stuff that he stole. He also points out that the state is willing to spend more money to lock him up for a petty crime of shoplifting than they're willing to spend to feed him. It's a very heavy statement, and it rings true, not just for Leroy in this fictional world, but also for so many people in the real world. And I don't know, it was just a really sad scene. I'm glad that they put that in there. I also did like when Matt, I don't know who this woman was that Matt goes out to speak to, but I liked their interaction. I thought it was very cute. It's nice to see Matt kind of like joke around a little bit. I've been rewatching the original series, and Matt is just so serious all the time. Like, he jokes around a little bit and has a bit of a sarcastic side in the first season, but once you get to season 2 and all the stuff with like Foggy and his friendship, which is another conversation for a different day because I have thoughts about that. I don't know. It's just so heavy, and he's just kind of unlikable sometimes. If I'm going to be frank, like, he's just not always the most likable character. So it's nice to see some of that charisma that I know he's got. After everything with Leroy, we do also discover that the cop, Powell, was not in fact the man who shot Hector, but I do still believe that it was a cop. I also still believe that they're foreshadowing Matt possibly losing his license, because when Matt confronts Powell regarding Hector's death, Powell threatens to go to the bar association because of Matt obstructing an active investigation as well as assaulting a cop. And this is the second time that he has talked to Matt about Matt possibly losing his license based on his actions with the Hector Ayala case. So I don't know. I think like it's not a coincidence. From here, we cut back to Fisk, who I actually find really fascinating this season. Seeing him try to follow protocols to clean up the city is taking his character in a much different direction than I was expecting, but I wholeheartedly welcome it. And I'm waiting for that shoe to drop where he's not so perfect in the public's eye. I mean, I know there's definitely people who don't support him, but for the most part, it is seeming to the public that he is no longer like a criminal and he's doing things the right way. I also have to mention the children singing "We Built This City" to Fisk is so fucking funny. I was rolling. I was shrieking with laughter. I swear to God. It's just something that I wasn't expecting. And the juxtaposition between this person that we know is a villain, a criminal, bad guy, kingpin, just sitting in a chair at the front of a classroom with a bunch of kids singing this horrible song. It was just so funny, which, by the way, fun fact about "We Built This City," it is regarded as the worst song ever. There's quite a few articles about this. I had heard about this prior, like a few years ago. So I was aware that this was the case for this song. And so I decided to look up some information about it. And there's quite a few articles regarding how bad that song is, including one from GQ written in 2016 that I will link down in the description if anybody's interested in reading it. I highly recommend it. While Fisk is subjected to the torturous song sung by these little elementary school children, Blake and Sheila find out that BB wrote an article regarding Fisk's union busing. Fisk is, not surprisingly, incredibly pissed off, but he has to visit the Latvian Cultural Center for Latvian Heritage Day, where he has to hear them sing "We Built This City in Latvia." I'm so happy that they doubled down on this bit. I shrieked with laughter. I am not kidding. Shrieked with laughter when they started singing that song again. I just can't get over it. A side note that I want to mention is that I'm so glad that Born Again is giving us some levity and some comic relief, but not the typical MCU comic relief. You know what I mean? Not super quippy. It's very natural, funny things that have been happening so far. So I appreciate that. I think that's great. What did surprise me about the whole leak incident was Blake owning up to accidentally being the leaker, which when he said that thing about possibly being on ketamine, I also lost it yet again. And then especially when Fisk replied, you should probably stop talking now, so bluntly, it was great. Peak comedy, no notes. I did like Fisk's response to learning that Blake was the leaker and appreciating Blake's accountability in the matter, but also making Blake very aware that if it happens again, he's screwed. He's completely screwed. Meanwhile, we jump back to Matt, who finds the bullet casing from Hector's shooting and discovers that it has the Punisher logo on it. So I am sure that you can imagine where he heads off to next. I really wanted to get a Punisher t-shirt and noisemakers and stuff like that for this, but I can't find one anywhere, which is surprising. I really thought maybe there would be one at Target, but there's not. Anyway, Frank attacks Matt because of course he does. And he and Matt wax philosophical once again about what they both do and which of them is right in the way that they do it. It sounds like I'm complaining about that, but I really am not. It's the perfect way to reintroduce Frank and Matt in this series. And I also really love these moments between Frank and Matt because at their core, they are two sides of the same coin. And it's so easy to understand both sides of the argument. Also, just have to say it, really fantastic performances from both John Bernthal and Charlie Cox in this scene. When Matt starts talking about Foggy and who Foggy was as a person and how he was just the most innocent and too good for this world person that he's ever known, it got me a little bit misty. And honestly, I'm going to be committing a cardinal sin here. And I'm so sorry, but I don't even like Foggy that much. So the fact that I got emotional about this really speaks to the performance in this scene from Charlie Cox. At this point, Matt heads back to his apartment where Heather's staying the night. And they're very clearly falling in love with each other. It's very cute and heartwarming, but this never ends well for Matt. So I am doing my best to not get attached to Heather here. I don't foresee her having a good ending in this story, and I'm gonna actually in a few minutes here get into why that is. The show now cuts back and forth between Matt waking up in the middle of the night and heading up to his rooftop while Wilson Fisk is descending the stairs into the underground, and Matt opens the door to what I would describe as his own Batcave, while Fisk walks past his rabbit in the snow painting, like I said, deep underground. And we see the room that Matt enters contains multiple Daredevil masks in a row, which was so hype. And he opens a box containing, I think it was his billy club. I'm not 100% sure. It wasn't nunchucks. So I'm pretty sure it was the billy club. Meanwhile, Fisk is presented with a large, elegant pasta dish. Matt practices with his club on the rooftop, and we discover what really happened to Adam. Fisk has him trapped in a cell underground. And finally, we also know where the cuts and scrapes and bruises on Fisk's knuckles came from. The episode ends with Muse bringing an unconscious man into his own underground lair and beginning to drain his blood. And then the credits start to roll. I thought that was a great episode. I really liked it a lot. I'm excited to see where it goes. I really, really enjoyed the scene of the cuts back and forth between Matt and Fisk. I just think it's really cool the way that they keep kind of showing that these similarities between Matt and Fisk. The other really cool thing about Matt and Fisk in Born Again so far is that they're both trying to suppress that darkness within them. And that's another reason why that scene is so cool, the cuts back and forth between Matt and Fisk, because it's showing them still embracing that darkness and just doing it in a more secretive way. So that was great. I'm also really thrilled with what they're doing with Muse so far. I wasn't sure if they would keep the scene from the comics in where he's like literally hanging people upside down, I believe like 131 people, to drain their blood so he can use it in his artwork. But the end of the episode obviously answered that question pretty quickly. So that's cool. On the subject of Muse, so this is kind of what I was talking about earlier with, I'm sure if you're interested in Daredevil in any capacity, you've probably read about this already, but there's been some speculation that we've technically already seen Muse in the show without his mask on. So there was a kid in episode 2 who attended Heather's book signing, and his name is Bastion. He basically says to her that he really needs her help. He's really sick, and is there any, is she taking new patients? She says to him, here's my email. I can move some stuff around. So Bastion is played by Hunter Doohan. Probably it's Doohan. I don't know. Hunter's name appears in the credits of episode 4, despite not appearing in the episode at all. So that may connect him to being Muse. I mean, I believe it. I think that is the case, especially because I went and I rewatched this scene again once I read the theory. The shop owner or whoever it was asks Heather what her next book is going to be. And she starts talking about how we filter our lives to social media. And she mentions wearing a mask. And as soon as she says that, it's the most obvious thing in hindsight, it cuts over to Bastion's face in the audience. So I just feel like that's got to be it. There's no coincidences. I refuse. So while this episode poked some holes in my initial theory, I still think that we might see Matt start to lose his grip. And the reason why I think that is not now because of Fisk, but because of Muse. And what I'm thinking is Muse is literally, he's an absolute monster in the comics. He turns the bone of, I believe, his first victim into a knife. And every single piece of art that he does is he uses human skin and blood and bones to create his work. So he's super fucked. He's a really messed up guy. And I just don't think that Matt will be able to wrap his head around the level of messed up that Muse is. It wouldn't surprise me if Muse takes Heather, and maybe that's what finally is just the breaking point for him, is that this is another person that he couldn't save. And I really think that would fall in line with the existing themes that are present throughout the first 3 episodes of this series so far. We've seen Foggy lose his life essentially because of Matt as Daredevil. We've seen Hector lose his life because Matt outed him as the White Tiger. And now potentially Heather could lose her life because of her association with Matt and Muse. I don't know. I'm still trying to make my theory work. Don't judge me, but I think it's plausible. So that was episode 4. And with that, we are actually halfway through season 1 of Born Again, which is wild. And I think it's really solid so far. I am very much enjoying the story that they put together. I like the tone. I like the cinematography. I like the way that it looks. Everything is just really, really nice so far. And with that being said, as I said before, I have been rewatching the Netflix series, and I am going to say something a little controversial that maybe might ruffle some feathers, but I don't think that the original series is as good as people remembers it like to be. Season 1 was peak. It was great. No notes. It was fantastic. But once we get into season 2, the pacing is really, really off in that because of all of the stuff that they kind of ham-fisted in with the hand. And it brings everything to a screeching halt when they cut away to that B plot. The stuff with Frank and the Punisher and his case and the cover up, all that's great. But the rest of the season is very bloated. And honestly, I think if they had cut this up with the hand and trimmed it down, we would have had like 9 or 10 episodes instead of 13, which is more in line with obviously where we're at with Born Again, with that being 9 episodes. So I really appreciate how tightly written Born Again is. And my really, really hot take, and you guys might hate me for this, but I think Born Again is shaping up to be better than the Netflix series. And I'm going to stand by that unless they really, really mess it up. So anyway, that's where I'm going to end this. Thank you for watching. And, I'm going to say it. Please consider liking and subscribing and all that good stuff, because it would really help me out and I would appreciate it so, so very much. And, also leave me some comments. Let me know. What do you think about Born Again so far? Do you agree that it's better than the original series? Do you think that it's worse? What's the problem? Like, what are your issues with it? Thanks again for watching, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I will be back on Tuesday with another movie trailer video. I can't believe we're at the end of March already. So on Tuesday, we'll be looking at some trailers for some movies releasing in April, and we'll find out if any of them actually look good. So yeah. Thanks again, and I will see you guys next time. Stop fucking with your hair. Stop doing it.